Hello, listeners. This is Kat. Welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the continuation of Throw a Chair Through a Window and Call It a Day. This is the second half of Chapter 7. Shota has many regrets in life. For starters, he regrets living. He regrets going to a beat-up school where his teachers were always seconds away from calling the cops on him. He regrets not beating the living shit out of his junior high classmate who found abusing a kitten in front of him to be the funniest thing in the whole goddamn world. He regrets learning how to play the bass guitar because when is he ever going to need that? He regrets not developing a healthy sleep schedule as a child and instead choosing to rely on unhealthy dosages of caffeine. And most importantly, he regrets not adding a sword to his hero costume because, yeah, he doesn't know how to use one and it would most definitely be a dead weight during villain fights. But he'd be a dirty liar if he said it wasn't cool. However, when it came to Sekijiro Khan, all that flew out the window, and the only thing left in its wake was pure, unadulterated hate. He did not regret giving a 10-minute rant about why cats are better the first time he met the man, and he also didn't regret how 15 years later he's still actively trying to make his life a living hell when the situation calls for it. And he's succeeding, and so by default, he will never regret calling out Vlad's poor life decisions and proceeding to enjoy the expression of resignation and pain on the poor but deserving man's face. Clearly, his students didn't either, judging by the coughing sounds coming from Shinso's side of the computer screen and the fact that it took Midoriya a full 5 minutes to get a hold on his laughing, leaving him red-faced and breathless. Not that Shota was complaining. The delay gave him time to think over his alibis. One thing he did regret, though, was thinking that would be the end of it. Aizawa. Vlad started, pressing both fingers to the bridge of his nose. May I ask why you have kidnapped several students and apparently ordered them to break into the school? He says that as if it wasn't the whole point. You may, but I doubt you'll get any real answers. You know what? I'll take what I can get. Vlad dragged up a chair next to him. Ugh. That way their faces were leveled. God, where do these chairs keep coming from anyway? To start off, why was the entire staff notified about a data breach in both my and Nezu's systems? They get notified? Well, shit. Maybe the online breach was unnecessary after all. The underground hero could see his green-haired student jotting down that information before checking off a box. Well, he's glad they have the proper precautions in place, but it never hurts to test it out. I don't know, Vlad. Did you tap on any suspicious links recently? Was feigning ignorance the best route to take right now? Probably not. But did he care? No. Not if that was the price for the pure amusement he got out of the Blood Hero's befuddlement. The illegal ones are especially dangerous. They even give you a virus and expose personal information. If that's the case, then I think I should be the one interrogating you. No, Aizawa, I did not tap on any suspicious links. Who do you take me for, a creep? No, but a man with a dog fetish? Maybe. Kaminari started coughing. Aizawa, what the actual... Damn, is he loving this. Vlad clenched his fists together in mock prayer, as if his personal problems were within any primordial being's pay grade. Second, why did Kuroro shout out the passcode of my phone after apparently stalking me for who knows how long? Oh, so that's how he got caught. Bummer. Shota will have to arrange some lessons in undercover work sometime this week, after his principal job is over, and he'll be forced to slip back into the position of a powerless heroics teacher that can't make enough differences in hero society. I don't understand youth culture nowadays, Vlad. It could have been anything. He wasn't even lying about that one. Ever since the whole Jared 19 fiasco, he hasn't been the same. And even if it wasn't a huge coincidence, then I think the responsibility lies on you to better manage your daily actions. Oh, really? The black-haired man nodded. Like what? 1. You're a pro-hero who let a second-year sneak up on you long enough to gather private information. Might want to work on your awareness skills. And 2. The fact that your first thought after realizing your info was leaked was to accuse me of being responsible for it is just disappointing. I'm disappointed. Are you disappointed? Shota momentarily directed his questions at a still panting Midoriya, who nodded. He's disappointed. We're all very disappointed, Vlad. Wow. Just... wow. Third, why did your computer show a bunch of children laughing in the front office? A voice cleared itself behind Vlad. There were children in the front office? Shinso asked, feigning innocence and confusion, with the rest of his teammates behind him carrying similar expressions. And during humanities? How strange. Although I guess the real question is, why was the office left unsupervised? The erasure hero smirked. So they escaped after all. The group flashed a thumbs up once the blood hero turned his back again and ran off to class. Sure, the stealth mission had a few mishaps, but they succeeded in the end, and really that's all that... For Christ's sake, Shota, You realize that's not a good thing, right? Okay, that's it. No more confusing answers and deflecting, Vlad started, wisely giving up on gathering information about the past 2 security tests. Are you legitimately building an army of hero students to kill me? Because it's really starting to look like that. Shota scoffed. Absolutely not, he said before turning to Midoriya. You got that on record, right? The comment about the army, too? I mean, I don't think I am, but it's a good idea. Yep, the boy replied enthusiastically before pursing his lips in thought. Should I add a few exclamation points after your denial? Really sell the point? He made a so-so movement with his hand. I'm not much of a shouter. Maybe do it in italics instead. Adds to the intensity. Vlad gave him the "Are you serious?" look with the twitching eyes and scrunched nose. See this? The fang-toothed man gestured between the heroics teacher and his student. I don't like this. You're recruiting soldiers and turning them into mini-yous. I knew this generation was cursed, but did they listen? No! Huh, maybe Shinso was right about Vlad shaking his fist like an old man. Also, the hell did he mean mini-yous? In Shota's opinion, there had been far too many people comparing him to his students. The first one they got their conspiracy theorist hands on was Shinso, and wasn't that just a disaster? Because, yeah, he can sort of see the similarities between them. Eye bags, floaty hair, failure of a smile, and dead inside. But unlike Shinso, he doesn't make sarcastic remarks at everyone he meets. Fuck, bad example. Eri, though, completely absurd. The bond there is a little less about physical features, like the red eyes. His eyes are only red when he activates his quirk. This doesn't even make sense. And more about how he's the girl's unofficial guardian, while she's a ward of UA. But in terms of personality, they got it completely wrong. He doesn't enjoy candy apples, he doesn't make those cheesy muscle poses that Eri's been learning from Midoriya and Muriel lately, he wasn't an avid Crayola user, and he wasn't unable to smile due to severe childhood trauma. God fucking damn it. You know what, just ignore the last 2 examples. They're not important right now. The important one is Midoriya. First off, everything Todoroki said about them sharing physical features might be the biggest stretch he's ever seen. First off, the boy's hair was green. Yeah, it had some black in it, but the heterochromatic-eyed boy acted as if that was a genetic rarity in Japan. Second, having a quirk that erases quirks does not mean your child will be quirkless. It just doesn't work like that. Not to mention, their ages don't fit either. So yeah, it's a stretch for appearances. Personality, on the other hand, same fucking thing. Where Midoriya prefers tea, he would know because that's about half of everything the kid has stocked in his fridge portion. Shota prefers coffee. And sure, the boy may have recently been experimenting with coffee lately and using smaller amounts of sugar each time, but who doesn't have their caffeine awakening at this age? Where Midoriya is constantly compared to an angel by everyone who meets him, including the underground hero himself, because he'd be lying if he said otherwise. Shota was once hit smack dab in the face with a cross because Ibarra thought he was the devil reincarnate last year. The green-eyed boy may occasionally engage in psychological warfare or slight emotional manipulation, as he still proceeds to call it, with his classmates, teachers, and random employees at a hospital, but that's really as far as it goes. Logical ruses aside. And finally, if that wasn't still enough to get Nomuri off of his back, there are the differences of their pasts. His freckled student was discriminated against for being quirkless, while the tired man was discriminated against for having a villainous quirk. Both are examples of quirkism, yet still very different. Midoriya was constantly beaten down by his peers, while everyone was too terrified of being beaten down by Shota. And while there were some moments in junior high when an occasional bully would try to spread rumors that he steals quirks or stab his eye out, Jesus, and Shota's the villain here, it wasn't anything too bad. While Midoriya was isolated and mistreated by his friends, classmates, and teachers because they all thought he had some sort of contagious quirkless disease, Shota was isolated and mistreated because they all thought he was going to kill them and their entire bloodline. Sure, it's still a form of isolation, and both of them had to deal with constant staring and whispered remarks, but it's completely different, right? Maybe the insults directed toward Midoriya were spoken louder than his, or maybe he didn't get his from teachers too, or maybe it was outside the class and not in class, and... Shit. Midoriya is a mini-him. Vlad, do you need me to get you a glass of water? He said, instead trying to smother the inner thoughts that were kicking and shoving at his brain to be let out. Vlad spluttered at the sudden change in conversation. Because I think you're starting to hallucinate. What? No. I bet it's been a very stressful day for you, sir, the green-eyed kid comforted solemnly. A pro-hero's job is never done, after all. And before you disagree, I'd just like to tell you that Kororo has been in the dorms all day with Tokiyami. They even posted a picture of them listening to MCR on Herogram a few minutes ago, and that there's a very high chance that what you saw was a regular shadow. Holy crap, not even Shota thought of suggesting that. The Erasure hero ducked his head in a falsely somber nod. effectively hiding the grin that's threatened to break out on his face from the world. "You know what's a good idea? How about you just sit in that chair?" Shota nudged it far away from him, and observed the rest of the security check. He lowered his voice into a mutter. "First-class view, courtesy of my ass." "Security check," the blood hero whispered, suddenly sounding very exhausted, as if the crushing weight of his black-haired co-worker's pettiness was finally taking its toll. Thank God. "That's what you're doing? How are you even—" "Just sit back and enjoy the show. Stealth breach complete. A lot more successful than he was comfortable with. They're going to have to add some more cameras and alarms near the ventilation systems and windows. On to stage 3. The underground hero smirked as Midoriya pulled out his notebook, the last notebook he would need during the secretary job, now that he thinks about it, and was startled to find that he didn't want to think about it, and ran over to the members of the final group of the day. Physical destruction. "So, you know what you're going to do now, right?" Izuku asked carefully as he watched Kaminari roll up his sleeves, teeth glinting as an excited grin spread across his face. "Oh yeah, gonna spark this thing into oblivion with million volts." The blond boy stretched out his hands and got in a stance, locking his eyes on the ID swiper device before him. "I call it Pika Pika." "Okay, so that's a no." "Kaminari, you're not going to be using 1,000,000 volts. You only need about 200 for this. The goal is to short-wire the card swiper, not your brain." The whole idea of his classmate short-wiring his brain whenever he reached his maximum voltage, though, was still a scary thought to think about. After all, who knows what could happen if it had long-term effects on his nerve cells. Now that Recovery Girl has more staff with her, Izuku had hoped that Kaminari could get the quirk counseling and treatment he needed, but old habits die hard, he guesses. "No offense, Mido," the electric blonde said easily, and the green-haired boy instinctively tensed up. "But if you want my lightning to reach it, I kinda have to go above and beyond. It covers the entire surface area of my body and layers it multiple times to increase the distance it travels. Even 1,000 volts barely covers a foot." The one-for-all user crinkled his eyebrows. What did he mean by surface area? "But the distance shouldn't matter for you." His classmate gave him a weird look, and he took that as a sign to elaborate. It's just that I don't know why you need to wait for your lightning to shoot out across several feet, or even inches." "Well, that's how my quirk works, Mido. Has been for years." His classmate had his eyes narrowed. Is that confusion, annoyance, anger? And a small voice inside Izuku that he thought he had destroyed screamed at him to back down. "Don't ask questions. Don't try to correct him on his quirk. He knows more than you. After all, what do you know? He's had his quirk for over 12 years, and you've only had yours barely 2. Stop looking down on him. Stop acting like your ideas have ever been useful. They're not. The ideas are useless. All of your notebooks are useless, and you're useless." The green-haired boy sucked in a quick breath as he was suddenly thrown back into the present moment, a weight knocking just hard enough into his shoulder to cause him to stumble a bit to the left, but light enough to make his movement almost unnoticeable. Almost. Slightly disoriented, his eyes roamed around his surroundings, only coming to a stop when he noticed a tall, dark presence at the very right corner of his vision. Aizawa-sensei. He didn't lift his head up enough to see the man's expression, but he knew he was concerned. He always was, honestly. Concerned for Izuku, that is, more so than the rest of his students, but right now it's mainly because the hero student has been standing and staring at Kaminari for quite a while with a frozen look of horror on his face, and it's that sudden realization that has the freckled boy second-guessing Shinso's earlier statement. He's not Aizawa-sensei's favorite student, even though the man is by far his favorite teacher, but maybe for once in his life he's not the least favorite either. He's just there. He's a regular student whose regular teacher has regular worries for him, and right now it's taking everything in him not to completely break down at that. It took him a while, but he's finally normal. He's finally gotten the school experience he should have gotten years ago. The experience he deserved, as Hound Dog kept drilling into him. But now isn't the time to have realizations. It's the opposite, actually. He's in school. He can't just embarrassingly break down sobbing. He's still mortified, like he did last week. Aizawa-sensei purposefully bumped into him because he knew it would snap him out of whatever self-deprecating trance he was previously in, and now it's time to let his teacher know that it worked. That Izuku has changed this week, thanks to him, and he won't take the indirect lessons of analysis and self-confidence for granted. The green-haired boy's breathing evened out, his pulse slowed down enough to not be thrumming in his ears, and he saw Aizawa-sensei lift his hand. He heard a single sound. Snap. Except it's not. Your quirk isn't the ability to shoot lightning out of your body, Kaminari. If it was, you'd be able to control the direction and length of it. Right now, as it stands, all we know is that you can control how many volts of electricity you produce, and that it releases itself in a short electric aura surrounding your entire body. According to you just now, you constantly have to produce over 1,000 voltages just so it can travel a little bit of distance, and given your limit of 1.3 million, that can't be good for you. Izuku, so caught up in his analysis session, was completely oblivious to the quickening pace of his speech, words shooting out of his mouth so fast it was barely audible, oblivious to the way the blood drained from Kaminari's face as he slowly backed away. You can't shoot it like bullets or tendrils without the use of equipment, but anything you touch immediately feels the shock with no damage to you as long as you stay below 1.3. Along with that, it slightly paralyzes anyone who makes contact with it, or rather you, and you can absorb any electricity from outside sources. He dissolved into a fit of quiet mutters for a few seconds before suddenly stopping, eyes growing wide and now lightly parting, open as he breathed out the next few words. Oh my god, you're a fucking human taser. Izuku pointedly ignored the small language. Should I even bother correcting you at this point? From Vlad King and the, you know what, I actually like you better this way, from Aizawa sensei, as all the dots began to connect in his mind. He had always thought there was something off about Kaminari's quirk, since he had never really believed that a person's quirk should ever purposely work against them, but now he actually knew why. It's like All Might said a few years ago, when the green-haired boy panicked about his quirk registration. The whole reason people are allowed to change what they're registered as is because over time you may realize your quirk isn't what you thought it was. For example, you may think your quirk is telekinesis, when really it's just the attraction of metal objects. Quirks are tricky like that, and Kaminari is just beginning to understand the full effect of what that means. Huh? Or maybe not. I don't really know how else to explain it. You control the voltage of your electricity as if it were a setting, and anything you touch feels the shock. You're a taser, although you also absorb electricity and redirect it. So you're a lightning rod. The boy frowned. As far as I know, there isn't anything I can compare it to help you understand. So what you're saying is I'm like Prince Zuko, the electric boy breathed out in amazement. Ah yes, Zuko. But now isn't the time to feel nostalgia. I mean, kind of. You can both redirect outer sources of electricity, but unlike you, he can't store it in his body. But I'm Prince Zuko. Also, he can actually shoot it out of his body in a specific direction. You're more of just an electric explosion. So, Zuko? The one-for-all user has the feeling his classmate isn't really listening to him. He can't produce electricity on his own either. He produces fire. A more accurate comparison of you and another character in Avatar would most likely be Azula, and even that's a stretch. Jiro could totally pass as Mai, too. She has that vibe. We'd be an epic duo, Mai and Zuko. Well, this is going nowhere. Who's Prince Zuko? A peppy voice piped up from a few feet away. Oh no. The moment Uraraka sees a picture and single-sentence summary of the Fire Prince, she'll shove it in Todoroki's face, and the theories will just start rolling in. It'll be the Dobby fiasco all over again. Sure, both of them have a scar on one of their eyes, an absent mother, a horrible father, a hypothetical sibling that turned to the dark side, fire powers, a redemption arc, through the powers of a friend. Okay, Izuku is going to save the BuzzFeed unsolved knockoff of an internal monologue for later. Now is definitely not the time for another crisis, as he's sure his tired teacher would agree, since he wears a similar look of apprehension on his face, if a half-centimeter of a furrowed brow counts as apprehensive. Nothing! The gravity girl stared on in suspicious disbelief at Izuku's words. Anyways, back to the card swiper. How about instead of standing like 3 feet away from it, why were you doing that in the first place? Maybe just touch a single finger to it and let the electricity flow through? Got it, the human taser of a boy said with a toothy grin, muttering "embrace the Zuko," when he thought nobody else could hear him. Although judging by his teacher's eye roll, someone did. Both Izuku and Aizawa sensei took a few steps back in caution as the first step of the physical destruction stage was put into action. Then, several things happened at once in the next 10 seconds. First, Kaminari screamed for Kiyoshi as he placed his entire hand on the card swiper. Second, the green-haired boy was caught in another dilemma between his options of Zuko or Mai. Third, the electric boy conveniently forgot he only needed 200 volts for what their goal was, and that just because Izuku had a revelation about the true essence of his quirk, that didn't mean he wasn't still susceptible to short wiring his brain. Fourth, the card swiper fucking exploded. Brilliant gold and bronze sparks dispersed into the air, reflecting themselves in mesmerizing green, black, and yellow eyes, before pathetically disappearing on the concrete. All that remained of the card swiper was a charred, wiry mess, and in the aftermath of the mess, as Kaminari drooled from his mouth and wobbled around, it was only Aizawa-sensei that spoke up. We knew the card swiper wasn't resistant to large inputs of electricity. Why did we even bother testing it in the first place? The green-haired secretary, Momo, and his teacher stared at Yue's third-floor window in bewilderment as the 5-pound medicine ball bounced harmlessly off the glass, doesn't seem like glass, and toppled to the ground. Maybe it was just Izuku, but he was preparing for a more, deafening shatter. You know, where a million pieces of delicate, transparent material are launched into the air and screaming immediately follows. Kind of like what happened after Mike Sensei's Halo solo, only without the steak knife murder chase. Well, I was not expecting that, Aizawa-sensei stated simply. Try a 10-pound. Momo nodded, still in shock from the previous failure, and slid 2 5-pound projectiles into the cannon. Ah, yes, the cannon. Sometimes Izuku would stare at the gigantic black object and wonder when his life changed from being a quirkless outcast to a hero student casually shooting objects out from a medieval weapon. After a few seconds of pouring the gunpowder into the tube for the fuse, all 3 of them covered their eardrums from the loud boom that resonated around the earth. They can only hope they don't get sued by non-UA students due to the noise ordinance laws. Hesitantly, the trio looked up at the damage they caused. Which was none. The window was exactly as it had been when they had got there, spotless and laughing at their misery. What the actual hell is that window made of? Aizawa-sensei muttered out, and Izuku couldn't help but agree. He knew UA was decently secure overall, but what he assumed was bulletproof windows? If they went as far as that, it was safe to assume they made it fire-rated too. Maybe they really did underestimate how far Nezu will go. But still, it's never a bad idea to test it out. Not wasting another second, Izuku lightly tugged on his teacher's hanging capture weapon, drawing the tired man's attention. Should we light the balls on fire? Momo's eyes widened as she whipped around to face him, with a parting mouth, probably to interrogate him on why he thought it was a good idea. But hey, it's not his fault if he wants to play it safe. It's simply being proactive. But before she could say anything, Aizawa himself shook his head. A thoughtful expression clouded his face as an incredibly relieved one took over hers. But Izuku knew better. It wouldn't be enough. Let's up the weight to 20, add some spikes around it, and then set it on fire. His teacher explained, signaling Izuku to write it down, but knowing the boy already was. A shadow fell over Momo's face as she stared at the way too contemplative duo, alternating her head between them and backing up. She was right, the black-haired girl muttered, reaching for her phone and dialing an unknown number. Midnight Sensei was right. There's 2. Oh my lord, there's 2. I can't handle 2. Heard you've been talking shit, Kayama, the underground hero drawled out into his coffee, the one that still has whiffs of smoke coming out of it, by the way. If Izuku heard Mei's supersonic muttering correctly, then this would be due to her newest baby, the thermos. Yes, it already exists, but unlike the other ones, this one has a microscopic slot at the bottom for a ninja star, so it's only natural that it's Aizawa-sensei's new favorite invention, and that he has permanently taken her off of the list he calls kids I may or may not expel one day. Why does the green-haired boy know this, you ask? Simple. It's because the man whipped it out last Thursday to show to Vlad and loudly proclaimed that, yes, he would gladly find a way to expel his co-worker. Go cry about it, you fatherly hobo, the R-rated hero shot back, signature playful smirk curling around her facial features. Izuku flinched imperceptibly next to Monoma, almost dropping the stance he was using to demonstrate to the blonde boy how he should aim the punch at the school's white pillars next to kendo. There's that word again. Fatherly. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just a word with 8 letters, 3 syllables, and 2 vowels. After all, it's not tied to him nor Aizawa-sensei in any way whatsoever, no matter what Shinso told him, right? So why does it keep coming up? Oh, Monoma said in a deceivingly sweet voice, causing Izuku to sigh. What's this? UA's Hero Course Golden Boy is taking his precious time out of his day to show me how to throw a mediocre Wait, do I step forward with this hip shift? Nope. Keep that leg back, but pivot your foot and move the heel and turn in the direction of the punch. The green-haired boy kicked at Monoma's leg to nudge it back. Widen your stance and bend your knees a little more for stability, but don't bend your posture with it. Keep your back straight, shoulders squared, and... Damn it, Monoma, your hands dropped from your face again. Ah, crap, my bad. The blonde copycat brought his fist up to his temples in front of his face again. You gotta stop doing that. You're leaving yourself wide open. Yeah, it's just the weight of Kendo's fist size enhancement quirk keeps making me lose track of how much force I need to lift it when it's back to normal. Like that nickel in the phone prank from that one office scene. Just show me how to throw a mediocre punch. So, Uraraka, I know I'm the one who called you here today for a job, but I think it would be best if you headed back to class and lived the rest of your day in ignorant bliss. It's not you, I promise, Izuku clarified, waving his arms around in a panic to make sure one of his closest friends didn't get the wrong idea. It's just that now that I think about it, floating a small bomb above a certain area to let gravity do its job and explode, it doesn't seem school appropriate. Sure, none of this does, really, but I feel like Cementos Power Loader and maybe Nezu would draw the line at a mini grenade. Especially if May designed it, which she did. Even Aizawa-sensei agrees. And that's a really high bar. Right? Right, the Erasure Hero said, turning away from his temporary secretary to face the brown-haired girl. Your compensation for wasting your time here today is Vlad's dog. Vlad's dog doesn't pay my bills. It might just be Izuku, but he could have sworn he saw a millisecond-long flash of Uraraka's past life as a joint-smoking mafia member threatening someone to pay her what they owe her, before she bludgeons them to death with her 10-cent fan. 5 seconds of silence later, the student's teacher spoke up. Your compensation for wasting your time here today is Vlad's dog, and anything you find in his wallet. Ojiro, same thing as Uraraka, except in regards to student safety rather than property damage. Believe me when I say your quirk is so useful for this course of action. More than useful, actually. But during the time I was planning all this, which was a grand total of 10 minutes, I think I forgot the detail that your tail cannot aim and launch a flaming 20-pound medicine ball with spikes poking out of it without getting at least a few stab wounds. Freckled boy, having apparently nothing else to say to the incredibly polite-tailed boy that he almost never talks to, eyed his gruff teacher. Unfortunately, we have lost access to a dog, wallet, car keys. He doesn't want to get bludgeoned by Uraraka, but he doesn't want to get arrested either. Just how many of Vlad King's items did she take? An IHOP gift card, a Starbucks gift card, a family heirloom of a hero's great-grandmother that will be up on eBay later today, and a state-of-the-art AC. What I can offer you in compensation for your wasted time today, however, is a drawing from Eri, my winning enthusiasm, and a breathtaking smile. The tired man's face didn't move a single inch, his voice staying at the same monotone level, permanently maintaining its resting bitch face. Ojiro gratefully took the Crayola-stained copy paper from his teacher before awkwardly smiling at the duo. Thank you, I think. Izuku tracked Kachan's movements as the boy tactfully stretched in preparation, rolling his shoulder joints, flexing his palms, shaking out his arms, lightly jogging in place, all that jazz. He really looked at life as if it was a race to be won, didn't he? Yes, Izuku and his teacher had dismissed Uraraka from the front lines because they knew that dropping a literal bomb would be going too far. Maybe it's hypocritical of him to reject her but keep his explosive classmate in the game. Emphasis on explosive, but he guesses it's because Kachan is able to control the force and direction of his explosions, unlike a grenade, or at least if that grenade hasn't been altered by a certain pink-haired madwoman. They would have only been able to conduct this experiment if the combined forces of Kendo and Monoma with enlarged fists weren't strong enough to break the wall, which they weren't, and hence the green-eyed boy's current predicament. So he guesses he's grateful for the new opportunity that rose from failure, albeit a bit disappointed. But it's not like he wanted to kick his red-eyed classmate out, right? Of course not. That'd be stupid, and way against the plan he came up with, and hyperfixated on for 10 minutes a few hours ago. This is a good opportunity because now they can test the effects of an explosion. And yes, he is once again ignoring how any of his experiments failing would technically be a success. Somewhere along the line, he must have forgotten that there was a purpose to doing all this, which is to identify the weak points of the school and fix them. And now, all he has on his mind is just destroy school go boom, in a robotic voice. But that's probably because he watches too many apocalyptic movies, as Aizawa-sensei himself can attest to. Izuku thinks he can still hear the words his teacher told him yesterday at the mall as he shoved every rock-lock keychain he could find into his shopping cart. You had us walk in here, walk out, buy a change of fancier clothes, walk back in here, and make a Pretty Woman reference. One more pop culture punchline, and I'm permanently banning you from viewing any form of media. Which Izuku had joyfully responded to by holding up a limited edition Eraserhead plushie he found in the man's face and whispering, "Big mistake. Huge." In the end, he got several glares, but an enthusiastic high-five from the cashier, so yeah, it was worth it. It was when Izuku observed Kachan flex his palms, for the upteenth time, that a new thought occurred to him. This last stage is basically a free-for-all analysis session, right? After all, he has used quite a lot of time here, learning new things about his teachers and classmates. For example, Present Mike enjoys Beyonce, Aizawa-sensei may have committed murder, Momo and Uraraka could potentially make one of the strongest hero duos if they had May as their support technician, Kaminari is a human taser, and Kirishima seems to have gotten matching tattoos, with Tetsu judging by the silver letters MAN on his arm, meant to be completed with a bright red LY. And through all of his observations, he had finally gathered up the minimal amount of courage he needed to speak them out loud, and if the deadpan looks his tired teacher kept sending his way every time he tried saying, "But whatever, probably not true," and "I don't know, though, so just ignore everything I just said," or anything to go by, his advice might actually be a bit useful. I know, right? How big of a 180 from junior high is that? And if his small comments were possibly helping his classmates develop themselves into the best heroes they can be, then is it really that bad of an idea to do the same for Kacchan? It's not like he'll die. He recruited Kirishima into his group for that exact purpose, a human shield. And don't give him that look, because it's working. The pitiful life of Kaminari had been rescued 15 times today in the last hour. But then again, Bakugo could shove the red-haired boy off like a fly, if his murderous intentions were strong enough. It happened before during a one-sided recess squabble in 4th grade, and it could easily happen again. Not that the green-haired boy believed his classmate would be impulsive enough to hurt him where teachers could easily see and report it, right? Right? Yeah, he's lying to himself. Just keep your mouth shut for a few more minutes and you'll be fine, Izuku. Just 2 more minutes. An image flashed before the green-haired boy's eyes. It was Kacchan. The orange and green hues of his hero costume tainted a murky brown from the sludge of the earth, red eyes blown wide and wavering as they aimed themselves in front of him. Yet it seemed strangely distant, as if the ash-blond boy had locked himself in his mind and not a single soul could pull him out of there if they tried. A weathered hand desperately clutched itself by the side of his head, delicately prodding at the single line of blood that flowed from his ear, smudged against deathly pale skin. The other hand occupied itself by balling up the leather fabric over his chest, twisting and pulling and searching for something he couldn't find. A breath of air that dispersed itself before it could reach his lungs. The images locked eyes with Izuku, and suddenly that blood-stained hand was reaching out, fingers morphed like claws as if to say, You did this. You stood by and let this happen to me when you could have prevented it." The freckled boy's mouth was moving before he even realized what was going on. "Kacchan?" The ash-blond boy paused in his movements to face the source of the sound, his eyebrows arched downwards, his lips pulled into a toothy snarl, and all at once his palm was lighting up and aiming directly at... And then it stopped. What? Izuku opened his eyes. At what point had he instinctively closed them, to see his explosive classmate looking at him with an unreadable expression? His palm, slowly, very slowly, as if it were fighting to stay alive, sizzling back to normal color. He didn't once try to hit him, and settled for a glared greeting. Again, what? Oh my God, this was a mistake. Please, just run. Run while you can. Well, I was just wondering. Not for a long time, just now it occurred to me. I mean, it's always been a constant thought, but... Jesus Christ, Dick. Fuck, what the hell do you want? Izuku furrowed his eyebrows. Rude. This is what he had talked with Hound Dog about last Friday, in the remaining minutes of their session, Bakugo's seemingly never-ending anger at him. Yeah, his stuttering can be annoying at times, but Aizawa-sensei always found a way to bring him back on track without being a jerk. Yeah, Kacchan's a jerk. The green-haired boy decided to save that potentially long thought process for later, not wanting to waste even more time and make the boy even angrier. He huffed. Does it hurt? Your ears, I mean. The frustration faded off his explosive classmate's face, replaced with confusion. It was a weird look on him. The hell? Your ears. Do they hurt? Because you constantly explode things, all the time. The ash-blond boy slightly bristled at that. What? And every time you do that, there's just a loud booming noise right after, and you've been exposed to that sound for roughly 12 years. I know I read somewhere that the louder the sound and longer the exposure to it, the more hair cells in your inner ear that get damaged, and he probably shouldn't use the word weaker. More damaged they are, and the more damaged your hearing is. It also depends on how close you are to the source of it, but you've been at arm's distance from the source your entire life, so... Kacchan's eye twitched. Crap. But not that it's a major problem or anything. That's a lie. It is. Izuku just doesn't know how to phrase it in a way that doesn't send him to Recovery Girl in the end. It's just been on my mind for a few years, and I figured I might as well get it out of the way, right? But yeah, obviously not a bad thing. I mean, look at me. Not that I'm comparing myself to you. It's sad that he has to clarify that. But look at me. I've also been exposed to loud sounds my whole life, and it's never had any effect on me. Like, I constantly had music blasting in my ears during health class in 8th grade so I could tune out the teacher when she started talking about why quirkless people should be extinct or why the lessons didn't apply to me because I was a freak of nature. Jesus Christ, that's so depressing. You have to be stopped, Izuku. Kacchan twitched even more. Oh, Lord. That's just one example, though. Totally not an accurate comparison. My old neighbor played his music really loud for a few days, so that hurt. Although I would later find out it was because he needed to drown out the screams of his father when he tortured him and eventually, Izuku dragged a finger across his neck. But I think you already knew that. The cop car he was being taken away and passed by your street that night, and I think he spray-painted your house one time. Coincidentally, it was the day after Daiichi had found him with scrapes and bruises on his knees after school. But an even better example would be how everyone else here has also been exposed to your explosions, and they're all fine. And it's been 2 years of right-in-the-face mini grenades. Hell, I've had those for 12 years, and I'm completely fine. And God, where was I going with this? Never mind, forget I said anything. Just blow up some stuff and ignore anything I might say about hearing in the coming years. Boom. Damn it, Shitty Deku, just shut up! The green-haired boy barely suppressed a violent flinch, but judging by the way Kacchan's eyes immediately zoomed in on the way his foot shifted back a few inches, as if he were ready to slip into a defensive stance at any point, which he hates to say is 100% true, he noticed. The blonde himself shifted back a little bit and clenched his hands into fists. Jesus Christ, you think I don't know that? Huh? What? Izuku asked dumbly. I was just asking. Of course I know how my explosions affect my hearing, dumbass. I've been dealing with the side effects of this my whole life. I'm bound to notice how quieter things sound after I use my quirk for a bit. I'm not an idiot like you. Izuku chewed on the inside of his cheek. He didn't say you were. I'm smart enough to have added precautions by now, okay? Did you ever wonder why my eye mask bends back to cover my ears? It's because I added fucking hearing aids. That screw-eyed psycho in support wouldn't let me leave him until she put him in my controllable settings, too. He's incredibly proud of May for designing that, incredibly disappointed in himself for not noticing how Kacchan's mask increased in length since last year, but he's also getting increasingly annoyed with how much he's being yelled at right now. Izuku bit his cheek harder as his classmate continued. Of course, now of all times is when he chooses to talk to the green-haired boy. Be fucking sides. I've trained my quirk for years. I know how to control the strength of my explosions. Unlike God, not all of them are as loud as a whole-ass missile drop. I don't just mindlessly explode things, okay? I'm not that careless. I explode what I want to explode, and I always have a reason for it, too. Shit. I always have a reason for doing what I do. Izuku let his stinging cheek escape his teeth's grip at that. Yeah? I know that? Your reason is that you're supposed to use it when fighting. Kacchan made a frustrated noise at the back of his throat, and the freckled boy glared. It's not his fault his classmate is being overly complex right now. I mean, ugh! Izuku doesn't know what parallel dimension he just entered where Kacchan actually stutters, rambles, and struggles with his words, but he knows he wants to leave, because somehow this is scarier than any other explosion to the face. And why is he saying all this to Izuku of all people? I always have a reason for doing things, got that? I got hearing aids because the explosions made listening a pain in the ass. That's a fucking example for you. I chose King Explosion Murder as my first hero name because I thought it had a message I wanted in it. But then King-sensei went ahead and trashed on it, saying it went against what heroes should represent or whatever. I was pissed, but it's a good thing she said that or else I would have been stuck with that name forever, understand? What? Are we talking about hero names now? Yes, Deku. We are. Keep up, will you? I'm saying that my reasoning behind choosing that old hero name was wrong. So stupidly wrong, I could fucking laugh. It was pretty damn stupid, too, and I regret it. Kacchan's frustrated breathing slowed down, and his voice lowered to an almost whisper. I regret it. All of it. And I wish I never did it. If I could go back in time and take it back, I would. Get it? The two stayed silent for a moment, blood-red eyes boring into the emerald green, before Izuku finally spoke up. No. Sorry, I'm still caught on whether or not by King-sensei you mean the pro-hero Midnight that's just barely out of hearing range. Kacchan roared in frustration as he aimed a couple of explosions at the sky to blow off steam. It didn't work. For fuck's sake, Deku, do I have to dumb everything down for you, huh? He screamed loud enough to damage both their eardrums, but quiet enough to not gather any unwanted attention, as they were a decent distance away from the rest of their classmates. Is that it? Are you seriously that fucking useless? And that's when the dam broke. Oh, well, I am so sorry, Kacchan, the One-for-All user said all too calmly, forest green eyes gleaming into that rare venomous color as the explosive boy flinched back. I'm sorry I can't read minds. I'm sorry I can't immediately decode whatever cryptic nonsense you're spitting from your mouth right now. I'm sorry. I won't say whatever the words are for you, so you can once again cowardly avoid talking through your problems and put the responsibility and blame on everyone else. Izuku's classmate opened his mouth, probably to start yelling at him again, but he didn't give him the chance. He had his turn to talk, and he spent it insulting him, normally. Normally? More like every damn time for the last 12 years, Izuku would try and resolve the conflict before it turned physical. But after the week he's just had, he realizes now that he's not responsible for being the bigger person. Being the bigger person really just means accepting unreasonable treatment from others and acting like it had no effect on you, like it was ever okay to do to another human being. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Happy now? No. It was a rhetorical question, Kacchan. I don't care. Well, too bad. You're getting an answer anyway, shitty damn it! Why does he keep cutting himself off before he can say Deku? Kacchan gritted his teeth and clenched his fist a few times before continuing, a very disturbing expression on his face that was halfway between, I want to kill your entire bloodline, and I will literally pay you to have your entire bloodline kill me. What's your... Shit. I don't know what's your favorite animal? What? What? Izuku asked incredulously, because what the actual hell? I asked what your favorite animal was, Nimrod. You deaf or something? Izuku knows there's probably a joke that could be said about the pure irony of the situation, but he currently doesn't have the mental capacity to figure it out and perform it properly. However, Miss Joke will forgive him one day. Nevertheless, he answered. It's a cat. My favorite animal is a cat. The hell? Why not a dog? Oh, so this is what Aizawa-sensei felt like. Izuku bared his teeth at the other boy, and the sparks of electricity glowed brighter, slithering its way up to his neck. Did you only ask me my pet preference so you could force your own false opinions on it? Technically, you can't have false opinions, but the green-haired boy likes to believe that the cats and dogs matter is the exception to this fact. I should have known. He really doesn't know where all this anger is coming from. Yeah, he was annoyed at the boy for twisting his words and insulting him again, but he'd already made his retort for that. And now Kacchan was asking about the animals he liked, so shouldn't he be happy? Then again, he only asked to make fun of it, so maybe this is a little justified. Hound Dog also told him to be more open about any negative emotions he was feeling, so... I didn't just ask to... Ugh! The damn mutt said I had to do this or whatever. I had to make some small... Shit, ew. Small... No. Small Ugh! So now he's mocking Izuku by mimicking the way he cuts himself off. You know what? When I came over here, it was only because I had a question regarding the health of one of your 5 senses. I didn't ask for this. Your ear safety is now of no importance to me. That's a lie. Izuku can and will ask Mei to show him the blueprints of the mask design so he can take 3 pages worth of notes and try to develop an even better prototype with her. So that underhanded mocking you're doing of the way I talk? Cut it out already. I'm not mocking you, nerd. Now who's making assumptions, huh? Damn it, he's right. Hound Dog said I had to make small talk or whatever. Don't make it weird like you always do. Oh, he's the one making it weird. What's weird is that it took 4 times for Kacchan to say the word without gagging. Now tell me what your favorite food is. You choose now of all times to make small talk? Now? It's been 12 years since we had small talk, Kacchan. You can't ask these unrelated questions out of nowhere and expect it to be okay. Besides, you already know my favorite animal. My favorite food, too. It's spicy katsudon. This whole time it was spicy? Kacchan furrowed his eyebrows. I thought I was the only one Auntie Anko made that for. Yes, it was spicy. You really didn't know that? The fact that you didn't, even after our moms literally hang out every weekend, shows that you can't randomly make small talk now. Well, Auntie said. And stop hogging my mom! It was at that moment that Izuku noticed how close the two had gotten. Kacchan was inches away from him, holding the explosion design that's behind his head on his costume in his hand, and ready to use it as a bludgeoning tool. And Izuku was inches away from him too, his notebook and fancy mechanical pencil ready to be used as a sword and shield if necessary. They were smart enough not to use their quirks during their little spat, but the fighting stances they had subconsciously slipped into showed that they didn't really need them to send a person to Recovery Girl. So maybe Izuku shouldn't have been so surprised when he felt a signature gray capture weapon secure itself around his waist and hoist him 4 feet into the air. You can't be a jerk to me and gossip buddies with my mom at the same time. Ah! The green-haired boy observed as his limbs dangled in the space below him. Feeling a strange sense of déjà vu, he looked to his left and, as expected, he found his teacher staring at the two of them with the most dead expression on his face. Ah, he's probably feeling the familiarity of the situation too. Problem secretary. Bakugo. He can't tell if that's a nickname, promotion, or demotion. I hope you know I won't hesitate to kick your asses to Canada if you repeat the whole ground beta experience today. That's nice of him. Usually it's Antarctica, or some other very strange threat like boiling their teeth or deleting their kneecaps. Suddenly Aizawa faced him with an unreadable expression as he lowered his voice into a whisper. Bakugo and your mom are gossip buddies. Occasionally. And he believes what she says. He treats her like a god. Her word is the gospel. On one hand, he's pretty offended, and maybe a little jealous. He tried so hard to be Kachan's friend up until this point, and he's gotten nothing but a bomb to the face, but his mother gets home-baked goods. He's not going to lie, it hurts. But on the other hand, who doesn't treat his mother like a god? And either way, she completely deserves it. I see. Yeah, I can work with that, he stated simply, oblivious to Izuku's growing suspicion. Anyway, Bakugo. His teacher's voice raised back to its normal volume before he could ask any questions. Kachan looked back at them. Resume your stretching, and once you're done, go ahead and blow the wall to bits, but tell us if either doesn't work or how much force you needed to make it work. Oh, and expect a lot of toilet paper in the coming days. Huh? Nothing. Yeah, Izuku's definitely suspicious. So, problem child. A mug of coffee clanked down on Nezu's desk, next to a pair of legs. Summary of today's events. Did we verify that the school's online firewalls are airtight? Do we know which areas we have to add cameras to so no other stealth groups can sneak in through the windows and sneak right back out? Did we cause enough property damage? Did we make Vlad cry? Did I make enough death threats today? Is my inner emo goth aesthetic showing enough, or do I need more eyeliner? What the hell are you doing? Nemuri smirked as she angled her head over her shoulder to look at him. She was draped over the rolling chair. Her heels were propped up next to the computer in Nezu's office. She was wearing a gray scarf for a reason that is unfortunately known to him, and she was drinking from his coffee mug. He knew it was going to happen again one day when someone messed with his coffee. He just didn't think he'd be betrayed by one of his closest friends. He also didn't think one of his closest friends would be waiting in his, Nezu's office, just to do such a poor imitation of him, too. What? It's a pretty good replication, if I say so myself. Shota flipped her off from the doorway, and she groaned. Fine. Sulk if you must, Mr. Darcy. One of these days I'll get you to appreciate all the time I wasted in acting class during our second year. But don't take my word for it. Take your little secretaries over there. With a small frown, the underground hero looked down to his left at Midoriya. The green-haired boy had his notebook clutched in a death grip in one hand. When did he get that out? How does he always get it out so fast? And a pencil in the other. His entire body was stiff as a ramrod, eyes wide and mouth opening and closing at random intervals as he looked from a smirking Nemuri to a confused Shota, to Nemuri, to Shota, and so on for the next few seconds. Shota was being dramatic when he'd said he'd snap his neck by moving his head between people too fast, but looking at it now, it's a very real possibility. Midoriya, the gruff man said, nudging his student lightly with the tip of his capture weapon to snap him back into the present moment. What does the gremlin mean? He ignored Nemuri's gasp. If I'm being completely honest, that's never a good way to start a sentence. I heard problem child and summary in the same sentence ended. He waved the notebook around. It just sort of happened. Oh my god, it's Pavlov's Midoriya. Looking back now, the same goes for the snapping. Nemuri began to cackle, and Shota would have told her to stick a sock in it, but he knows that would just lead to another dirty joke, and the kid looked like he still had something to say as he shifted his weight from leg to leg. Anything else? Izuku awkwardly laughed and scratched his temple. Well, not that the impression was accurate or anything. He doesn't like where this is going. But, before Midnight Sensei even showed up, I was kind of already maybe planning on, Shota sighed. Of course. It's not that he's disappointed in the kid or anything. Far from it, actually. The kid's reports of every course of action they've done so far has always been extremely thorough, and Shota would be lying if he said it wasn't a huge help ever since he was given this temporary job. Yeah, slipping into the role was pretty easy, but managing these kinds of things are always a difficult thing to do. So no, he's not disappointed in Midoriya. He is, however, incredibly disappointed in whatever deity smiled down at Nemuri and gave her the perfect timing to let her have the cocky satisfaction she has with herself right now. Nonetheless, he nodded his head toward the boy to continue, but not before yanking his cup back from the R-rated hero. Right. About the first question, the online security is impenetrable, aside from the exposed camera in the doorway of the teacher's dorms, which is already open so it doesn't count. Like Aizawa-sensei said, Nemuri gave him finger guns, and he resisted the urge to throw the next pot of coffee he was making at her scarf. Most villains would be too put off by anything they did find in there to try and plan anything, and even if they did, A quick look into the blueprints of the school showed that Nezu had implemented a defense mechanism that goes off when an unknown intruder enters through there. And the mechanism is... I don't know if there's a less aggressive way to say this, but it's a blunted swinging axe. Like, seriously, the moment a villain enters, it's just gonna ram them straight into the wall. Technically, it's not murder, but it's pretty damn close. The boy flipped to the next page, oblivious to how both Shota and Murray stopped their squabbling to share horrified looks at the new information. What is this school? A Saw movie? Next is the stealth group, which might be the only one with any major problems. Sure, the test wasn't completely accurate since Shinzo is a student at UA and therefore didn't have to break onto school premises to access the vents given that he has an ID card, but he was still able to crawl through the ventilation system and let in several other classmates through the window without getting caught. Because of this, they were able to stalk Vlad-sensei and Midnight-sensei. What? Shota's purple-haired friend stuttered out. Serves her right, he thought as he poured a packet of sugar into his new mug of When the hell did he start using sugar packets? And gain access to private information, as well as their computers. If they were villains, they would have done something way worse with the opportunity than haunt Vlad-sensei with a horribly saturated wallpaper collage and a black cat in the center. Why there were no cameras near the windows, vent openings, or front office is the problem here. So once again, we should look into UA's savings account sometime tomorrow. The boy cut himself off, and Shota knew exactly the reason why. Tomorrow. A simple word that billions of people use every day, and for a good reason. Till the sun comes crashing down on Earth to release death and destruction, there will always be a tomorrow for mankind. Although, as he's currently trying to force himself to face, the same doesn't apply for either of their positions. There is no tomorrow for Shota being principal and Midoriya being his secretary. There is no tomorrow for any courses of action they wanted to take, but didn't have enough time to complete in the last week. There is no tomorrow for Shota to hand off copious amounts of notebooks and fancy mechanical pencils to his student and watch as he filled them with superhuman amounts of reports and analyses. There's just today, and nothing more. Because tomorrow, the mankind one, not to be confused with the principal/secretary one, Nezu will come back. The little rat will jump right back into his rolling chair, sip some tea, break some students' dreams and aspirations, and forget any of this ever happened like he always does. It'll be just like old times when Shota's able to grasp some small semblance of what power really feels like, only for it to be ripped out of his hands and crushed right in front of him. The dust of his ambitions shaken off into a garbage can. Because this is what always happens, and the underground hero is once again disappointed in himself for forgetting that. He can't have power, he can't make a serious difference, and he can't convince others to let him have the opportunity to have and to do either. He's stuck. So he guesses what he's trying to say is that for him, there's no tomorrow. There's just today. And he'll be damned if he doesn't use the rest of today to the fullest. There's no tomorrow. Boo fucking who. Go cry about it, you sap. He has, 2 hours left on his last full day of being principal. Excluding the 2 hours he has tomorrow before Nezu gets back, that is. Fine. While it's not and never will be ideal, it's enough. Enough to try and convince himself that the changes he and Midoriya made to this school were not a lot, but they were enough. And one day might even help future students. And if not the changes they made to the school, then maybe the changes they made to themselves. Because Shota laughed at something. And what the actual fuck was that? But yeah, the underground hero may not be satisfied with himself, but that didn't mean the kid doesn't have to be. There's probably enough time to make the call later today about the budget, Shota said instead of his embarrassingly long inner monologue, earning a wide-eyed look from Midoriya. And if it's a matter of installing new cameras and alarm triggers by the windows and vents for the sake of security, I don't think we'll need another staff vote to do it, especially after the clusterfuck that was last year. There were so many life-endangering situations that by now, it isn't even scary to talk about, it's just embarrassing. About that, it's a good idea to install those in the areas I mentioned, but is there any way for the vent alarm to trigger if it's just anyone besides Shinzo? Ah, yes. The purple-haired brat who calls him Cat Guy, that for some reason he chose to personally mentor. With every Vine reference that comes out of the boy's mouth, yes, he knows what that is. A late-night Googling session with 10 compilations that got more and more absurd as time passed is one he wishes he could get back. He regrets that decision even more. But Shota guesses he doesn't mind too much. The potential makes up for it after all. Potential, not fondness. That's it, nothing else. He's not being a dad, so shut up, and stop giving him that look, Murray. Why is that? The spiky-haired woman asked. I think he's grown attached to it. On the way here, I saw him glaring at a kid who tried to help him pick up the vent seal. He also uses it as a mode of transportation between classes now, and I wouldn't be surprised if he hoarded some of his own items up there. So he built a nest. Completely normal. He came in with nothing, and came out with a physics textbook. That doesn't seem normal, but it would explain why his locker is empty, and besides it being pretty useful for him, it's also really, really cool. It can be stealth training too, to prepare him for hero course admission. And Shota knows that Midoriya knows that's a good reason, but he guesses the boy is still caught up in how Shinzo apparently dropped from the ceiling vents just to invite him out for coffee after school. But it's a valid excuse. If someone invited Shota to coffee by hangling from a ceiling like a depressed bat, it'd be hard to say no, both out of pure amusement and love for coffee, and out of pity for how much blood must be rushing to the other guy's head at that point from being upside down. Yeah, he can have vent privileges, but if at any point he tries to jump scare me like a knockoff Freddy Fazbear, I will not hesitate to fill the vents with rat poison. Midoriya gave an enthusiastic right as he wrote it down, completely unfazed by his teacher's threat of manslaughter. So was Nomuri, for Shota at least, but for Midoriya being unbothered, not so much, judging by the extra long sip she took from her. "Are you drinking alcohol?" Shota asked in disbelief. "Nomuri, it's 1 p.m. "Hey!" She dabbed a finger at him. "I don't need to hear this crap from you of all people. You may never get drunk during work, but that doesn't mean you never wanted to, and besides, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Anything in or near the PM area is fair game." Congratulations. She's doing the bare minimum of avoiding liver disease. Shota, with nothing but a gut feeling, snapped/pointed at Midoriya, who immediately flipped to a different page in his notebook. God, his theory was right. The snapping gesture became second nature for both of them, and he's sure he's going to miss it once he's back to being a regular teacher who has to give regular lectures again, no longer having the ability to stop talking whenever he pleases and have his student handle the rest. Alcohol can reduce communication between your brain and your body, costing you your ability to think and move straight, especially with damaged coordination and balance. And along with that, it also causes numbness and tingling sensations in the hands and feet. And while this may be okay to experience in a safe environment at night, knowing full well you'll wake up in the bed tomorrow with nothing but a hangover, I have to admit it's a little risky to be doing it in hero school where villains could attack and leave you incredibly unprepared. Midoriya made a yikes face, which somehow managed to communicate all the ideas he couldn't describe with words. Another thing Shota's going to miss about having a secretary that carries around a notebook filled with random knowledge at all times? The ability to call him at any point to discourage his female friend from drinking in a school full of teenagers. Haters gonna hate. Well, doesn't this feel nostalgic? Shota sighed and nodded at the kid to continue his report. For the physical destruction stage, there were close to no problems at all. The windows are unbreakable, even after being hit with flaming, metal-spiked 20-pound medicine balls. Nomuri choked. The walls were indestructible too, which is surprising considering it was repeatedly hit with explosions for an excess of 20 minutes and nothing else seems like it's on the verge of collapsing from so much damage. So we're good. But we don't exactly know if a grenade could be UA's downfall, but I doubt any villain would go that far. I also doubt any villain would fire 1.3 million voltages of electricity at a card swiper, which is what Kaminari did, who is currently with Nariko Rei in Recovery Girl's office. It's at times like these that Shota appreciates the addition to the staff. So as soon as that's replaced, there will be no proof that we conducted these experiments in the first place. No proof. What wonderful phrasing. It was necessary, though. Well, the boy continued, aside from Vlad King's wallpaper, that is, although I doubt he'll ever speak of it again after today since he knows it could have been so much worse. The green-eyed boy gave the two pro-heroes a toothy grin at that, and Shota wondered how someone so innocent could be oblivious to such a threatening statement. Another trait from his father, he assumes. I've already made a list of all the changes needed to be made, as well as their approximate costs, and it's currently in a drafted email to Nezu. I'd send it right now, but it'd be a good idea to let Hyun Gong from the business department check it over first, just to be safe. I don't think I made any errors, but if Principal Nezu is going to be the one reading this and possibly pointing out my mistakes, then that is not something I ever want to go through. Believe him, no one does. Nezu was never particularly mean to him when he was a student, but that may be due to the fact that the rat can't comprehend human emotion, and therefore doesn't realize that bluntly pointing out 75 errors in Shota's assigned essay on quirk laws and loopholes could be taken as such. Not that he minded, though. Made him better at grading and completing all his paperwork as a pro-hero, and it might have been where he got his bluntness from. And Jesus Christ, does he despise that. He never wants to be compared to an actual psychotic rat. And besides that, the forest-haired boy chewed on the inside of his cheek. I don't know. There's nothing left to do before school ends, or rather nothing we have enough time to do in less than 2 hours. So for now, it's just an empty schedule. Shota could think of many things that take less than 2 hours to complete, such as giving a survey for Midoriya to fill out, filled with a bunch of boxes to check out regarding the greatest fears and pet peeves of All Might and Bakugo. For research purposes, of course. The same for Mount Lady, Kamui Woods, and Death Arms from Nomuri, who he thinks will be much less hesitant about handing him the information. But that's precisely why he can't do that. Midoriya, bless his soul, is way too kind to give up the secrets of his favorite hero mentor. Shota's chest ached at that, but why? And his longtime explosive peer. And it's not like the erasure hero can tell the boy that the survey isn't actually necessary since he's already been doing some deep digging because that would just earn him a disappointed puppy dog stare. Something that all the staff at UA have learned to avoid at all costs by now. The last time one of them got one was when Hisashi rickrolled the entire class, and he still hasn't recovered. Today is the last full day of the two of them being principal and secretary together, and no matter how common it is in this school, he doesn't want to spend it with either of them feeling disappointed or stressed. And yes, he may be underestimating the strength of Murphy's Law, but so what? This was a busy and productive week for the both of them, and for that, at least, he thinks they deserve, dare he say it, a break. Yes, ring the fucking bells, because Shota Aizawa of all people had just admitted that he wants and needs a break. Zashi is rolling in his grave. He wants coffee, he wants his chair back, Nemuri, and he wants a laugh at the misfortune of others in his remaining 1.5 hours, so that's exactly what he'll do. And he'll encourage his his kid, his annoying but unfortunately endearing R-rated friend, and the other endearing purple-haired brat that just dropped in a crouch out from the vents and in front of Midoriya just to hand him his homework, to do the same. I do, Shota said, finally having succeeded in his attempts to knock Nemuri out of his chair. He grabbed his computer and opened the security feed to the eye mask Shinso was given earlier, which thankfully was still in the same position as it was before, when they almost got caught, right next to the Blood Hero's desk. Vlad still hasn't seen the wallpaper you made him, and I don't care what any of you hyperactive demons say. I'm not missing it for the world. Nemuri's head popped up in interest as she dusted herself off and rolled her own chair, next to Shota's behind the desk. Ha! Now this I gotta see. Here, here, Shinso said, dragging the other chair, and Midoriya with it, over to the other side of Shota before sitting on the desk next to the computer. Midoriya was a different case, though. Having already sunken too deep into the leather chair to get out, Shota knows the feeling. He was quick to accept that he would now be permanently positioned between the heroics teacher and the lilac-eyed snarky teenager. What he seemed unable to accept first, however, was that no one was bothered with him sitting there. Nemuri was already handing him and the other boy the mini bags of popcorn. When did she make that? Shinso was subconsciously using Midoriya's fancy mechanical pencils as gentle drumsticks against the green bush of hair, and Shota wasn't doing anything. He wasn't giving him a death glare, he wasn't trying to knock him out of his seat, he wasn't eyeing him with barely hidden disdain, he was just there. And the kid was there, too, not hunching in on himself or scurrying away. They were coexisting within each other's reality as principal and secretary, teacher and student, and mentor and mentee. And while that may seem stupid or just the bare minimum of common courtesy, it was a lot for the both of them. Nemuri may have chosen slightly different words for that last example he gave, but that's not the point. The point is that none of them made a move to disband their little group, because maybe deep down they knew they were more than that. They were, don't you dare quote him on this, he will deny it, found family. They were wanted. And yes, their temporary positions would end in a short amount of time, but as the four of them sat there with each other, munching on popcorn and sipping away at coffee as they repressed their snorts in reaction to Vlad's screams of horror, Shota knew one thing. For this, at least, there would always be a tomorrow. All right, listeners, this concludes the second half to Chapter 7. Chapter 8 will be next, which is the last and final chapter. I hope you all are still enjoying this fic. Let me know your thoughts and reactions, and as always, thank you so much for listening.